السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Hajar Al-Aisi. I am heading membership and volunteers at PMI KSA chapter as a senior vice president. KSA chapter contributes in the development of project management profession throughout Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with promoting best practices and empowering practitioners by providing them with knowledge and resources. Actually, I encourage all of you to be a PMI KSA member to benefit from such privileges and other opportunities. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you, Hajar.
Yeah, okay. Today we are talking about project management maturity insights presented by Engineer Salah Haswa. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce him to you. Engineer Salah Haswa is a strategic and project management consultant with over than 13 years of experience. He is one of 20 professionals worldwide with all PMI certificates. He is one of 25 significant contributors to PM Box 6th edition. He worked with PMI in USA for development of exam questions. He is approved risk management consultant by Aramco. And he is an expert facilitator with organization of PwC and KPMG. Just before we get started, if you have any question during the presentation, please type them in the question box QA in your control panel. We will also have time for questions at the end of the session. Now we will turn the time over to Engineer Salah Haswa, who is going to talk about project management maturity insight. So please, Engineer Salah Haswa, you are welcome. You can start and take you the mic.
Thank you, Hajar. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. And I thank you for attending this webinar. It's my pleasure to be your presenter for today. So the first thing I would like to talk about is the topic itself, the title, Project Management Maturity Insights. And why did I choose this topic in specific? Now, when PMI KSA asked me for a suggested topic to present, I was thinking of a topic that nobody is talking about that much nowadays, because you can see what is being circulated, mainly some sort of available information such as agile, or we're talking about waterfall, the differences, project management in traditional way, and so on. So I wanted to choose something that is not so many people are talking about. That's one thing. Another thing, here we're talking about project management maturity insights. Here we're talking about my own personal insights on project management maturity within the region. And this is something, comes from experience, and this is something I believe that would be valuable and beneficial for everyone. And therefore, I thought that this topic would be very interesting for most of the people. And I believe since we are now developing countries within the field of project management, the maturity to this field comes as something crucial and essential, because everybody nowadays working toward that goal is achieving this maturity. And therefore, this makes this topic modern. This topic makes it more related to our time and work and careers, and I believe it will be beneficial. So I hope everyone would enjoy that. Okay, so first of all, what is project management maturity? So when we're talking about the project management maturity, it's the capability of the organization to make sure there is a systematic approach on handling, managing projects across the organization, and even be able to develop it, optimize it in the best way to get return on investment. That's project management maturity. And every organization should always seek to attain this goal for their organization. The reason for, if we are trying to make a change, or maybe we are trying to deliver certain services or products toward our clients. Project management maturity not only is going to be a good return on investment, but it's also going to make a good positioning for our picture, for our professionalism, for the way we handle projects in front of the customer and even among ourselves. In fact, I notice some of the organizations suffer when it comes to the project management maturity, and it affects the clients, and it reduces and declines the customer satisfaction, which eventually this means lack of sustainability for the business in the future, and also less market share. And this actually, I've seen it happen in multiple industries, including in telecom, whether we're talking about also in IT and all that. So project management maturity should be always the goal for every organization, whether they are doing it as a service provided for external customers, or whether they're doing it for inside the organization. Now, we have multiple maturity models, starting with the capability maturity model integration, CMI. Now, I would like to highlight this maturity model in specific is universal. This is universal, meaning this maturity model is not only applicable to project management, it's applicable for almost any managerial field, whether we're talking about human resources, whether we're talking about competency framework. This is universal, and we can customize it and detail it more toward our project management. So this is one of the maturity models that we can use in measuring our project management maturity. Now, the second one is OPM3, stands for Organizational Project Management Maturity Model. Now, this one in particular is developed by PMI, Project Management Institute, and you can find even the book of or the main standard for OPM3 provided by PMI. Unfortunately, this has been, went inactive starting, I think, 2015, because before that, PMI provided this service, OPM3, to do the maturity assessment using its software. And I think by 2015, they sold it to another company, and then they lost this advantage. So this was actually a pretty good package when it comes to OPM3. This software provided an advantage, because you're going to enter the data. You have a benchmark with other 1,000 organizations that you can see and measure your maturity versus other organizations that are similar to your industry. So it was a great tool to be used, but still the OPM3 model is still valid. We can still use it. However, we don't have that software that generates for us the nice dashboard and results. We don't have the proper benchmark for that. However, we can still use it. And the other one that is active and customized for project management is P3M3, and this is in particular the one I'm using. It's still active. It's provided by Axelos, which is the British Institute that I'm sure you're familiar with, whether we're talking about Prince2 certification, managing successful programs, P3O, portfolio program, project offices, and so on. So this institute also has P3M3, portfolio program and project management maturity model. And if you look in detail in those maturity models, and by the way, this is outside of our topic because this will take a long time, but I just would like to highlight that if we look into details for those maturity models, we will find similarities. So if we're talking about the levels of maturity, whether we're talking about P3M3 or CMI, they're exactly the same, 5 levels. One for making sure there's a defined process, then, or let's say there is some kind of repeated process, then managed process defined, and then there is some kind of measuring process, and then optimizing. However, when it comes to the OPM3, it's a little bit different. It's the same way, but instead of 5 levels, they made it into 4. As you can see here, standardize, measure, control, continuously improve. Now, what's interesting about the P3M3 is the perspectives that they have established their maturity assessment on. And as you can see, there they are. They're in small fine line right here, starting with management control, benefits management, financial management, stakeholder engagement, risk management, organizational governance, and resource management. We have 7 perspectives. Now, If we're talking about management control, we're talking about how we're following up on the project life cycle, and so on. When we're talking about benefits management, believe me, this is one of the main perspectives that I find it the weakest in most of the organizations. Most of the time, 90% of the organization where we investigate when it comes to the maturity of project management, the weakest link is benefits management. Even though, despite the fact, benefits management should be the main concern of any organization, because this is how you can reap the value from projects. This is how you make sure that the projects are not just delivered and then put over the shelves, but rather we follow it up until the point we get a real enhancement to our business as usual and operation. And then we have financial management, which I do notice some organizations still struggle with that, and on how they itemize the budget and make sure the cash flow is managed throughout the project life cycle. Stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement, here we're talking about the logical part, how we organize, how we identify the stakeholders, how we engage with them, how we plan to engage with them, and so on. We have risk management, and when we're talking about risk, it's actually embedded in everything we do, because we live in a universe full of uncertainty, and therefore this is actually one of the essential pillars of the maturity assessment. We have organizational governance, where we try to make sure there's strategic alignment. This is the second weakest a perspective that I find in organizations, organization governance, which in other words, more of strategic alignments. Many organizations fail to make sure to choose the right projects that best serve their strategy. They don't have the right formula to do so. They don't have the proper framework to make it systemized. So this is actually one of the pain points I also notice. And then we have resource management here. We're talking about human resources. We're talking about facilities, equipment, technology, all that under this perspective. Now, I'm not going to talk further about the maturity models, but rather I'm going to talk about my own personal insights of the gaps that I usually found common across the organization. But first, why the maturity of the project management is something important. And if you remember, I told in the beginning of the session, it's all about return on investment. So check this statistics from PMI Pulse of the Profession. I think it was 2019. You can find it on PMI website. It compares organizations with high maturity versus low maturity when it comes to project management. So what do we notice here? Starting from right to left, the project failures, when it comes as rate in low maturity organization, it's 21% versus 11% in high maturity. What does that mean? The project failure is doubled in low maturity. So just the fact that you're going to invest in high maturity practices within your organization, that's going to reduce your project failure by almost a half. That's really good. Second thing, scope creep. Usually the organization with low maturity suffer around 47% of scope creep. And I think in our region, it's even much higher than that. I think scope creep is one of the biggest challenges the project manager is facing in the work environment that we have within our region, versus 30% only in low maturity, in high maturity organizations. What about projects being delivered on time? We have 39% for organization with low maturity, which means below 50%, which is very bad. But we're talking about almost 70% higher when it comes high maturity. It's 63%. That's really good compared to the low maturity one. And then how many projects have managed to finish within the budget? We have around 46% projects finishing on budget for the low maturity versus 67% for high maturity. And last one, eventually, this is our main goal. How many of the strategic objectives that those projects are contributing to, how many of them met their goals? When it comes to low maturity organization, it's just 56% versus high maturity organization with 77%. That's the end result. This is what we're trying to get, meeting our goals, contributing to our strategy. Okay, so this is why the maturity, the project management maturity is something really important, and we need to focus on, because obviously from those statistics that we have right in front of us, it gives us a really good return on investment. Now, um, throughout my experience and all the assessment that I have done, the audits for multiple organizations, for how many executives, managers, senior managers that I have met and had conversation with, uh, I have accumulated a lot of observations. However, I chose to discuss 6 of them only with you, and I believe those 6 main observations are, the most common ones. This is why I chose those 6 only out of a pool of, let's say, 30 observations. And I believe this is something that most of you can relate to, and therefore this is something you can start to work on within your organization. Now, those 6 main observations are misleading culture. This is actually one of the top, let's say, gaps main, what's the word, problematic obstacle that we can have toward project management maturity. Also partially utilized tools, and here we're talking about the technology, whether we're talking about APM software, Clarity, whatever platform we're trying to use, even if we're talking about simple spreadsheets like Excel and so on, we are not taking good advantage of those tools when it comes to project management, and this actually affects our maturity by the end. Weak strategic alignment. This is again one of the main problems that I usually find across the organization. Organization fail to find the right connection. They do not have what we call line of sight to make sure that every effort that we're doing, including the project and all other initiatives, are properly aligned with the strategy. Then blemished methodology, that whatever designed methodology, usually it requires a lot of improvement, a lot of effort to be reconsidering, to be customized within the needs of the organization. This is properly customized for whatever the project management and culture and the systems that we have. This is something also we need to look into. And then we have unchecked project life cycle, and here we're talking about end-to-end project lifecycle, even before the project, including the feasibility study, the business case, and so on, and also including what comes after the project. Here we're talking about benefits realization, operation, in order to utilize whatever we have produced in the project, product or services. And lastly, poor documentation. And usually when it comes to poor documentation, I believe it's one of the biggest symptoms that we have in the region when it comes to as an indicator for lack of project management maturity. Documentation, mainly, I believe it's terrible in most of the cases, and therefore it's really important for us to look into this one. Now, so let's take them one by one, starting with misleading culture. First of all, what do we mean by culture? Culture is the set of beliefs and convictions that direct and influence the behavior of the organization staff. Okay, so it's what they think is good in order to make sure that they do their job and get the results they want. And when it comes to culture, usually what I notice toward or against the project management maturity, that leaders don't care about project management maturity at all. They care just about getting things done. I want this done by tomorrow. That's it. How you do it, I don't care about it. And this is one of the biggest issues. Why? Because if we are, as leaders, pushing our staff to just get the things done without properly following the right procedure or doing it at least in the right way, this, first of all, will get us a lot of problems in the future, including not everything is documented properly, that we have done it in a way that could be sabotaging our relationship with the client. It can be done in an ethical way possible. It can be done using workarounds that will not be properly shared. And this is actually one of the biggest issues that I keep observing, and also even the project managers are voicing their concerns about that senior management, they just care about getting things done however it's being done. And this is actually something that you as an assessor or someone, you need to look or investigate within your own organization for the maturity. You need to look for this factor, because when we look at maturity in any organization, we look at two perspectives: the documentation perspective and also the people perspective. And this is something you can voice it out or get it or understand it from having conversation with the project managers, with the practitioners, even with the managers themselves. Another issue that I find that also that come from a bad culture. I remember in one of the organizations, whatever the project manager is going to prepare as a plan and present it for senior management, whatever plan, it includes estimates, time, cost, and so on. What happens is that the senior management are used just to look at the estimates. They don't believe, they don't have that level of trust with the project manager. So whatever estimate they're seeing, they're just going to slash 10% from it. Okay. Now, this behavior encouraged the project manager to do a workaround against it. Okay, so the counter action was from the project manager: whatever estimate he's going to get, he's going to increase it by 10% just to go in front of the senior management. They would slash that 10% and he's going to get whatever he wants. So this empty loop cycle happened due to bad leadership, bad culture being infested within the organization. So it's really important for us to look at our culture, how we behave when it comes to project management. Another thing, is it important for us to deliver the project to our client by hook or crook, or make sure that the customer is satisfied? That's the main point that we need to focus here. Now, if the leadership is focusing on, I just want to deliver my project, I want to get the payment from the customer, that's it, bye-bye, that's short-term strategy. Eventually, you're going to get your money from the client, perhaps, most probably, okay? But this customer is not going to get back to you. You're going to lose your market share, okay, because you're going to lose this customer, and maybe also word of mouth can affect, and this later on in the future can affect pretty much. So again, whatever you want to shape in your culture is going to affect your business sustainability in the future. So if you have this problem, which actually present in every organization, however, there's different levels, how can we change culture? Here I summarized it in what I call the 4 C's: commitment, competency, consistency, and catalyst. All right, so let's start with the commitment. And here, when we're talking about commitment, here I'm talking about senior leadership. Senior leadership are the main factor in shaping the culture within the organization. Without their commitment for a certain goal, this will not work. Whatever you're going to try to do in the organization, if you don't have the proper commitment from leadership, it's going to fail. Whatever we're talking about, whether we're talking about sales, whether we're talking about manufacturing, whether we're talking about project management, if we want to achieve something new and the senior management is not committed to it, this is going to be a failure. So the very first thing, senior management need to be clear about what they want. Are we talking about just to deliver the project, get our money, and that's it? Or are we looking for something even further? We are trying to look to get money from happy customers. We are looking in expanding our market share. So if you really believe that, not just decorated words. Actually, one of the things that I keep hearing that our organization have a new strategy, and I ask him, okay, how do you think about this new strategy? It's nothing, it's just decoration. This is a big problem. Whatever words that you have in your strategy, it has to be realistic, it has to be serious, and those leaders, those senior managers has to be committed to it. Otherwise, it will fail. And I remember, even there is a saying by Peter Drucker that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So whatever you're going to strategize, whatever tools you're going to provide, and so on, if the culture are not properly formulated to be aligned with your strategy, it will be a failure. And the smart senior management or leader who are able to change the culture toward to their own vision and strategy. Next topic is competency, and it's actually a big topic because whatever changes that you are trying to make, you have to make sure that the future state, the change in the future, is having those people compatible with their competencies to that level of change. So if we're talking about a new kind of system, if we're talking about a new kind of behavior or professionalism that we want to show and even work toward with our customers, so proper competencies has to be developed to achieve that level. Usually, personally, I believe that the best way for leadership and organizations to do is make sure to have internal resources to develop up to the level they require for their future state, instead of just removing and replacing with a new competent resource. Why? Because a new competent resource, if they come along, they come with their own different beliefs, and it will take some time until they get used with the new culture. Also, the people within the organization with any kind of change, they will be more resistant because they believe their job are not secured. So your objective is, first of all, to make sure whatever resources we have, we leverage their competencies to be properly aligned with what is required in the new change. I've seen a raised hand. Is there a question? Is there a question?
Yes, there is one question from Nawaf. If you permit, I read for you.
Okay.
I think that if organization focuses on increasing the maturity of projects, maturity on programs, and portfolio will follow. Do you agree? Of course, an integrated maturity study or plan is a must.
Well, Nawaf, mainly, yes, I agree, but you have to look into it. Is your organization, with their type of work and line of business, they are into the level of doing program management in a continuous way? Are they into a level where we have many projects that we need to start doing portfolio? You need to remember that programs and portfolio management is cost, right? I'm going to bring a portfolio management, he's going to do this task, he's going to be paid for it, it's going to be costly, same as for program management. So we cannot just have in any organization programs and portfolios just because we like the name for it. We need to have proper justification for it. So if we're talking about organization that's still not in the size of work that reach to program or portfolio level, then project management maturity is sufficient. Now, let's assume the other way, that the organization do have proper justification for having established portfolios, programs, and projects. Then, yes, you have to start working with a proper studied plan on how to leverage the project management and program management and even portfolio management maturity. One thing that you will notice in the P3M3 model, okay, that other than the 7 perspectives, you have 3 main sections: project, program, and portfolio. If you happen to have a maturity score of 4 in project management and 4 in portfolio, but you have maturity score 2 in program management, so your overall organizational project management maturity is down to 2. This means that those projects, program, and portfolio, they all come together. They all eventually need to be streamlined and integrated. And your maturity is as weak as your weakest section or link, which could be in project or program. So definitely I agree, it has to follow, including project and program management and portfolio, as properly within your organization with a clear plan that is realistic, that can be properly managed. I hope that answered your question. All right. So now let's get back to. By the way,
also.
Yeah, you have.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mohammed Saif, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sure.
Mohammed Saif raised his hand. Just unmute yourself, or.
Yeah, Mohammed Saif just raised his hand again. Mohammed, you want to speak up on the mic or write your question?
think he cannot unmute himself.
It's okay. It's okay.
So we can go back to him.
All right, yeah, because now we have 30 minutes left. All right, so by the way, the question that I answered, it reminded me of an observation. Usually in a small organization, let's say relatively small to medium, they always have this idea that they need to make those fancy names applicable to their organization in order to think, they are mature. So I know, for example, we have a department. The head of the department is supervising multiple projects. So they say definitely this guy should be a program manager, and the guy on top of him should definitely be a portfolio manager. First of all, technically speaking, when we're talking about the definition of a program, this is completely wrong. And second, it does not necessarily mean in each organization we have to have program manager and we have to have portfolio. Portfolio is established as a snapshot of group of projects and programs that we believe it should be managed so we can get a better benefits from it in optimizing and making sure there's no double counting of benefits and so on. And this should be justified before we say, let's do a portfolio management. So this question reminded me of this observation that people tend to say, let's have program manager, let's have portfolio, even though they don't actually do proper or actual program management. And also there is no proper justification for portfolio management. So thank you for this excellent question. So when we're talking again now about competency, we need to make sure to shape the competency of the organization staff to be compatible with whatever changes that we are looking for. And this reminds me of the PMO, which you are all aware of, the Project Management Office. This is actually one of the great means that we have to leverage our project management maturity in the organization. It's a centralized department where it's going to make sure our project management practices are disciplined. But here's the problem. Who do we hire in PMO? People who barely have proper project management experience. I know a lot of people being hired into project management and they never actually managed a project management end-to-end before. That's really big problem. Another thing, the PMO staff, they don't get treated with the proper training and the comprehensive training and workshops that they deserve and they need, because in their position they are a leader for the project management maturity, and therefore they need to be the best project management experience. And you cannot have by hiring just people to work as administrators. And that's one of the observations I noticed, that PMO people think we're going to hire anybody just to be a PMO officer or so on. This is not the proper definition of what we want from a PMO. This is more of a centralized coordination project management office. And therefore, if we really want to leverage our project management maturity through a PMO, we need to make sure to hire the right competent resources that can be a role model for other project managers, as well as having the proper training and comprehensive education. Another thing when it comes to the competencies is the Knowing Doing Gap, which is a book by Jeffrey and Robert. And as you can see, the concept Knowing Doing Gap, it means nowadays we have knowledge available in every way. It's so much easy to get whatever knowledge. You want to know about portfolio management? There you go. You have books for it. You want to know about program management? Yes, there you go. You have it. But knowing something does not necessarily mean that you know how to do it. And this is one of the issues that we have. We have people who are certified in this certificate, they have read this book, etc. And that means that we are confident that we're going to do this job properly. No, it's not necessarily the case. It could be, but it's not necessarily. And this is actually a gap that a lot of organizations suffer from. And we need to make sure to bridge this gap through mentorship programs, through workshops, mastermind groups, through on-the-job training. All these tools we need to make sure to be done to leverage the competencies of the staff to the level of our project management maturity. Another thing that I don't like to hear, quite often when it comes to organization, they always say, we want to be agile. We want to be agile. Well, first of all, we want to be agile long time ago. It's not something new. Maybe we had it in different terms. We needed to work faster. We wanted better productivity. We wanted, shorter business lead to deal period. Sometimes we call it business resilience, whatever the name. Okay, we always had the case. But the problem is, what I noticed that this word that is getting too much frenzy started to get some flaws coming to it, which is people started to love to do agile as a way to justify them not to do any kind of documentation. One of the biggest problems that we find with people who are saying, I'm doing agile project management, or maybe our organization is having proper agility or whatever, one of the problems is they lack the proper documentation. Not only that, they use it also as an excuse to skip through processes just for whatever sake they're saying to get this business done or so on. And this later on is going to fire back. So this is also another thing that I want to highlight when it comes to leadership. Now, the third one is consistency. What do you mean by consistency? It means that whatever change that we want to do, it should be, in a proper approach, logically planned, step by step. So, for example, if we're having level maturity 1 and we want to jump into level maturity 4, we cannot do it in 1 year. It should be step by step. And this is what we mean by consistent progress, even with low pace, but at least continuous, rather than having quite fast jumps that can fire back and nobody would be able to adapt to the new change. And this is something that we need to consider when we are trying to change the culture. Last thing, which is very, very important, and it should also be tied with the competency. One of the things that we need to look for is a proper defined competencies. And I'm talking not about training people, but rather than to know what kind of competencies we need to look for people, what kind of performance we are expecting from those competent people, and we need to provide them with catalyst, meaning tie their performance to the rewards and recognition system. This is really important. This is how you can influence change. So I remember one of the cases that I have found, they were, the PMO were telling me the project managers are always busy. I said, how? I said, whenever we ask them to fill this document, they say, I'm busy, I don't have time, bye-bye. And you know what was my answer? They're not busy. They don't see it as priority. Why? Because whether they fill it or not, it's not affecting their incentive. It's not affecting their reward. It's not affecting their recognition. And therefore, it's really important for us to tie this up to make sure it's properly managed in this culture. The next topic, or the next main observation, is partially utilized tools. Now, I know a lot of organizations have invested a lot in their softwares like EPM with certain add-ons and so on, and even dedicated platforms such as Clarity and so on, dedicated software for risk management such as Active Risk Manager and so on. The problem that we find after we invest that much on those softwares, it's not being used as the main resource for the PM. Guess what's the main resource for the PM? Excel sheet. Almost 80% of the time, okay, I find project managers mainly use Excel sheet and they forget whatever tool they have. And when we look at their project on their this software, it's not properly updated, which will give bad information for other, departments or for other leadership that they might use this information for decision making. And also, if we ask them, okay, so what do you do with this software? The answer would be, I'm just filling it out for compliance purpose, but I'm just using comfortably the Excel sheet. So our job should be to investigate that, understand the root causes, why they're behaving this way, and treat that right away. Also, many of those softwares are not properly automated. So one of the things that I noticed, in certain softwares, we have a template, but this template, it's not something to be filled within the software itself. They have to download it, fill it out, and then upload it. Now, this kind of hectic job, first of all, is not effective. It's going to waste the time of the project manager. Plus, it's going to, let's say, it will not be appealing for the project manager to go invest their time in using this resource or this tool as their main resource. Also, sometimes we have this EPM full of functions, full of features, how to do portfolio, how to do this proper dashboard. Unfortunately, almost 50% of those functions are not being properly utilized in the software. This is another main finding that I find in the tools and softwares. Another thing, that this tool for project management, it's not properly integrated with other systems, such as, let's say, SAP, ERP, whatever system that you have, okay, whether we're talking about for finance, whether we're talking about for booking resources. If my project management tool is not properly integrated, this gap, this missing chain link, it's going to waste my resources to follow up with the other departments just to get things done, and then take their input manually, or they take my input manually, and this will waste more time. And this actually result in overworked project managers, because the culture, the main culture that we have in the region, the project manager is one-man show. And since he's one-man show, he does not have the team, plus nothing is integrated properly, the tool is difficult for him, blah blah blah. All these things add up, and he barely managed to do proper documentation or proper management following compliance with the project management methodology that we have in the organization. So all things are tied up, and we need to look into these things to streamline it and make sure we make the project manager life easier. Next week, strategic alignment. And I have a lot of findings when it comes to strategic alignment, but I don't want to take much time because we don't have that much time. But first, there's not a standardized process for business cases. Most of the organizations I have not seen, maybe except couple of those organizations, they do not have standardized process for business case, how to conduct proper feasibility study, how to select the proper scenario, how to form a business case around it, and the content of this business case. Usually selecting the project comes more in an informal way rather than a properly formal way. And if it is being selected informally, emotions can play a part. It means a leader can select a specific project just because he likes it, not because it's the best option available. So that's why it's important for us to standardize the process. Another thing, if we like a project, what do? We try to look at our strategy. We look at certain strategic KPIs and goals, and we try to map those KPIs to those to this initiative or to this project. This is also wrong practice. This is what we call strategic misinterpretation. It should be the other way around. As the saying, I forgot by whom, but it's start with the end in mind. It means that we need to look at the strategic objectives, what we're trying to solve, what we're trying to exploit as an opportunity, and find the right solution for it. Not the other way, find an initiative and try just to get KPIs just to justify it. In this way, we're almost going to justify all projects, and this is not the case. Also, which is, by the way, a big topic, but I don't have much time for it. Projects are not assessed properly against the strategic goals and KPIs, and moreover, they're not properly prioritized and selected with the proper project mix. Now, for mature organizations, they do use algorithms to make sure that within a certain constraints, like certain budgets, certain timelines, certain strategic objectives, whatever projects we have, we're going to select the best project mix with this limited resources that we can get the highest return on investment. So many organizations unfortunately fail to do so. Next, projects are not followed through operations for benefits realization. Like I have mentioned to you earlier, one of the weakest perspectives that we find is benefits management. And I've seen a lot of organizations they do deliver projects successfully, but eventually it's set on a project shelf, and we're not going to utilize it. We're not going to operate in proper way to get the benefits. This is a bad practice. And these things should be solved on a program and even portfolio level to make sure those benefits are being followed up even after the project delivery. Lack of post-investment reviews. This is really important. We need to have a looking forward approach rather than looking backward. It means whenever we're done with a project, I'm not talking about delivery point of view, I'm talking even about benefits realization. We need to do a post-investment review. It means we need to look at this project. How much did we pay? How much did we gain? Was it a good idea? What can we learn from it? So we can leverage this information to properly select a better projects in the future. This is how we can benefit from post-investment reviews. The next is a blemished methodology, like a flawed methodology. Now, what I usually notice that methodologies in some organization either too simplistic or heavy. And we have this misconception that having a heavy, with rigorous processes and explanation, it means we have a good methodology. And this gives us a false sense of maturity. Even if you have proper documentation, a perfect governance, a perfect methodology, okay? We need to look at it in practice. Are people doing it? Are people actually using this methodology and it's actually benefiting them? So one thing that you need to notice, having a heavy methodology is not a must. And sometimes having a heavy methodology, even if it is good, sometimes it gives us a false sense of maturity, even though it's not the case. Because I remember in one of the organizations, I think back in 2015, when I assisted them, or 2016, I'm not sure, they had really nice methodology, very heavy, maybe with certain, minor comments here and there. Unfortunately, most of the project managers did not follow. I looked in their software, even they had an amazing software, mostly not filled out. And that's why I have a saying that it's better to have simple methodology that everybody happy to follow, with good results, of course, than a heavy methodology that everybody thwarted to follow. So again, it's really important to understand the culture, the people, in order to have properly customized methodology. And I'm a fan of simplicity. The best approach is to have a simple way to achieve what you want. The simplest way to achieve what you want, this is success. Next, having a methodology does not necessarily mean we need to be intolerable. We need to be strict. This is another thing that we need to understand. And it's not every little mistake we need to stop the project manager, put the blame, no. And also on the other hand, we should not be loose, because also that's another problem. Having a methodology, which I've seen it quite a lot, that people have a methodology and almost nobody follow, that's also a problem. Having a methodology need to have customization factors, classification for the projects. We do not have what we call one size fits for all. This is actually another misconception. Another thing, ambiguous. It's really important to have some description, some details that people can be able to follow through the documentation of the methodology and know how to apply it in real life. Also, it's really important to communicate the methodology with the project managers and every stakeholder as soon as you do an update. One of the things that I have noticed in some of the organizations, that they do an update, but they do not inform the project managers properly. And the project manager, sometimes they do their work, they fill the documentation, and then the PMO comes along and say, you know what, we already updated that, please fill it again. That's also another issue. Outdated, sometimes we do have proper methodology, but it's been 5 years, we did not customize it. Even though we had changes in our strategy, we had changes in our infrastructure with the resources, and we did not update it. So it's important to keep it under eye. Another thing is, we usually see that people who design the methodologies, they do it from one perspective, their own perspective. They do it in silos. It's really important for you, if you want to have proper methodology within the organization, to listen to all stakeholders. One of the things that I always get when I do an assessment with an organization, I always ask almost each department in the organization to have an interview or to have a survey. And people sometimes, say, no, that's too much information. You can never know where you get the right information. Sometimes I see even important information from marketing department, even when it comes to related to project management, to know the future, the customer satisfaction that is being reflected from our project management practices. So it's important for us to look at all perspectives, to listen to everyone who is involved with project management when we design the methodology. All right. Next, unchecked project life cycle. So when we're talking about a project life cycle, not only we're talking about delivery, which is usually from initiating until closing, we're also talking about pre-project, which is feasibility study, prioritization, portfolio, business case, and so on, and also post-project, which is benefits realization, doing operation, utilizing whatever product or service that we have done until we reap out all those benefits. And do you know that 15% of project failure is due to lack of project lifecycle plan? It's important to have proper project lifecycle plan, not only on a methodology level, but rather even on a technical level. We need to look at this project. If it is complex enough, we need to divide it into phases. Dividing the project lifecycle into phases, the delivery part into phases, help us to simplify the complexity of managing this project, as well as providing us with checkpoints to revalidate our project viability toward its business case. Another thing is poor compliance. I notice a lot of organizations fail in doing proper auditing. They do fail in proper auditing. The reason of doing audit, to make sure people are following the methodology. They want to make sure people are actually benefiting from those processes that are in hand, because whatever process that you have designed or you have in place, it comes with a cost. Following a process comes with a cost. So we need to make sure this process, with its cost, it's still getting us better return on investment. Next is having improper KPIs, whether we're talking about project investment side, okay, or whether we're talking about project delivery side, because usually how we measure project delivery side, we look at the completion of scope, on time, on budget, on quality. But when we're talking about the investment side, we look at benefits versus cost, right? So it's really important for us to establish proper KPIs so leadership and project managers can be able to follow and make sure we maintain a viable project in order to best support the business. Next, poor documentation. Like I mentioned, this is one of the biggest symptoms that I find that is an indicator of weak maturity, project management maturity in the organization. Poor documentation. First of all, sometimes in many projects, we have absence of essential documents. Like we have in our process, we need to have a project charter. In some projects, they don't have project charter. Fine. Okay, in some projects, they even lack the plan. Where's the plan? It's not in the software. It's not shared with anyone. That's also another problem. And even if we have documents, sometimes it's not inclusive to sufficient details. I remember one really clear, I think it was back in 2015, I was auditing a risk register. And I found with one of project managers have documented 2 risks in his project. The first risk, it was, I think, permits. The second risk, it was materials. And I asked the project manager, what are those risks? I don't understand. What are those risks? He simply said, it was 2 years ago. I don't remember myself. That's terrible. If the project manager himself does not remember what he has documented, how do you expect you're going to benefit anybody from documentation? The main purpose of documentation is knowledge transfer across the organization staff. This is how we develop the learning organization. And if we don't do with sufficient details, definitely we're not going to share the knowledge properly. And whenever this person moves out to another organization, he's going to take his knowledge with him. And therefore, what we will have remaining? Nothing. Next, poor quality content. Sometimes even when they write the risk statement, It's poorly written. There are certain guidelines on how to write an issue, how to write a change, how to write risk, how to do a proper estimation. And all these things need to have proper training, proper workshops to make sure that we have a good quality of content for our documentation. Next, unutilized lessons learned. This is really major topic that we need to focus on. We always hear about lessons learned, and even in some organization, I see that they fill out this sheet that is called lessons learned. But guess what? Nobody uses it. Nobody. So what's the point? Why are we documenting lessons learned? We need to make sure for any project manager, before he gets into a new project, he look back into the lessons learned and try to leverage from it to help him in the project. And if you want to know if your organization is suffering from poor documentation, you need to ask yourself this question. If I'm in midway of the project and I want to do handover, would it be something people are happy to have a handover? The answer, mostly from what we see, no. Because whoever is going to get handed over with this project is going to suffer. He's saying, I don't know nothing about it. This guy told me something and he left. We don't have proper documentation. I did not understand this problem, etc. This is how you can understand if you have a main problem with documentation. In conclusion, I have summarized certain conclusion points for you. First of all, project management maturity is never ending improvement task. Even if we get score 5, it does not end. You need to keep improving just to maintain it. Next, listen to the project managers and voice their concerns and challenges. This is very important. Third, what works in an organization does not necessarily work for another. If we heard, oh, it's amazing to have SPMO, strategy and PMO departments infused together. Maybe it works best for them, but not necessarily for you. Build a project management culture that thrives continuously for excellence, and this comes mainly starting with leadership. Next, utilize today's technology to make project management more effective. The future is technology. We're talking about AI, we're talking about data science and all that. The real advantage is to take that into consideration and automate project management as much as possible. That does not necessarily mean ignoring the role of the project manager. It means having, for example, in the far future, that a project manager can be just an AI. No. In fact, decision-making should remain with human beings, and therefore having a project manager is important. However, AI or data science can help inform the project manager to have a better quality of decision-making. Next, focus on knowledge sharing and proper documentation. This is really important for the sustainability of the organization and leveraging sustainable outcome. And by the end, we need to remember, it's not, the project management maturity is not the destination. It's just the mean to get to the destination. What's our destination? Better return on investment. Sometimes we get caught up with the mean. We forget the point. We forget the main goal. However, you need to keep always your eye on having a higher return on investment. And my own personal advice, make sure to be as simple as possible in achieving your ROI. So thank you for listening. I think we have maybe a couple of minutes to take in questions. Sorry, I don't have much time. Please, Hajar.
Yes, thank you, Engineer Salah, for that great presentation. Sure, we don't have much time late. So we have a question from Gader Muhammad. Most companies tend to have PMO, although it is not their core business. If project management is outsourced, the fear is that the expertise is lost. This is a paradox. What do you advise in such cases?
Very good. So first of all, that's a good question. You need to look in to the level of project management effort that you're doing in the organization. Now, if project management is a core part of the organization operation, definitely you should not outsource it. However, I think you're asking about the case, maybe it's not that important, so maybe it's better for us to outsource it. In that case, outsource it. And definitely it comes with a price. Because if you want to establish a PMO, if you want to establish, it will be costly. You need to ramp up competencies, you need to train people, you need to change culture, blah, blah, blah. You need to do a lot of things. This comes with a cost. So you're thinking, okay, let's outsource it. It will come with less cost. I will not have the headache. Yes, this is an advantage. But the disadvantage, you're going to lose expertise. Now, how you need to balance with that, it's all based on your future vision and how you want to incorporate that level of project management effort within your future organization vision. Now, if it will come more and more, then definitely you need to let go of the outsource at the proper point and shift in toward internal. You cannot have everything. There is no perfect solution in this world, everything with advantage or disadvantage. But the idea, the trick is to find the fit and the most fit solution to your circumstances. So it's all about having your own understanding of the current situation, the future situation, and make the proper decision for that.
Yes. We have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
What from Nasser? What to do if the methodology is good and needs to be implemented, but resisted by project manager? If they don't feel they are contributors, they seem to be to resist to this methodology.
Absolutely, that's actually a good point, and we have mentioned that. Remember, I told you, it's wrong to develop a methodology in silo. This is one of the biggest mistakes that we do sometimes, that we do methodology on our own and we forgot to voice the concerns of people. You need always to understand that when it comes to management, even though it's logical, but it's about people, and people have this emotional factor. People tend in their nature to resist change. So how you can mitigate that? There are many approaches like ADKAR model, from ProSci, you can follow that, is or John Cotter,
Yes.
8 steps for change. So we have multiple ways. However, a simple trick is do not design the methodology in isolation. Make a workshop, voice their concerns, and let them come up with answers and solutions, and they will feel it's their own solution. They cannot resist it. This is one of the small tricks that you can do. You can also steer the conversation toward what you think is best, okay? Especially if you have, back office research and you thought this is the way that should go, not the way they say, so you can steer it out in that way. However, when you all conclude to the same solution, they will be happy to follow.
Okay. Many questions about the presentation.
Yeah.
They need that you provide them this presentation. I think it is possible to do.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a question from Ahmed, where we could find data related to cost estimates inside Saudi Arabia related to construction. I think it is.
Okay. I think he's
Did you
talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's talking about public access data, right?
Yeah.
And I think we do not have that in Saudi Arabia, from what I know. But again, I'm not that much invested into construction field. However, but generally speaking, we do have consulting companies that they sell such data. I know certain interfaces and tools with heavy databases, with certain subscription that people actually, sell in order for construction company to use and benchmark their own work and make sure they have realistic estimates. But honestly, I don't know that much about it, and there could be, but I think public access data, I don't think we do have at the moment, but something commercial, definitely there is.
So a last question from Nawaf, is using a multi-dimensional model of process maturity assessment of the organization, is it a must?
No, it's not a must. It's all depending on the size of the organization, their way of work, their culture. You might even do your own model of project management maturity without even referring to a specific model, not necessarily following OPM3, not making a multi-dimension for assessing. However, it's really good for us to take different perspectives when we're doing maturity assessment. This is, I think, is a must, because if you don't do a multi-perspective maturity assessment, you're going to miss out on the reality that is being done within the organization. Like I told you, I remember even some organization, certain departments like HR or sometimes marketing, I get valuable feedback that I don't get from project managers themselves. So it's really important to have it perspective rather than multi-dimension and multi-view of processes. Processes are not the solution themselves. They are just a mean to reach the end that we want, which people doing a good practice that result with a better return on investment.
Okay. The last question, if you permit, Engineer Salah,
Sure.
from Harun. Can you please cover the examples and level of good documentation?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Now, if we're talking about risk statement, for example, which is, by the way, a bit tricky, I always advise on a specific guideline in writing the risk statement. Please make sure to write down the risk statement in 3 main parts: cause, description, effect. Now, if you're telling me risk, okay, permits, what about permits? Tell me more about it. Okay, maybe the permits will be delayed. Why? Tell me why. Okay, maybe because the certain person, he's not, prioritizing my work. Now, if we understand the cause, we can properly manage this risk. And if we have the proper description with the cost, now we have good statement. Now, if we add to it the effect, it will be a clear sentence in making sure that whoever reads it from outside, by the way, sometimes I do this test. I let someone else other than the project manager, including myself or some of my colleagues or my associate, to read the risk statement or to read some documents. If they understand it without referring back to the project manager, it means a good example of documentation. This is a good test. This is something I do. If I have to go back to the project manager, I need to ask him follow-up questions just to clarify the answer. This means very bad example of documentation.
Okay. If you can accept other question, because question comes later. So what area of talent triangle this website is concerned, and how much proportion strategic, leadership, or technical?
I think he's talking about the PDUs, Hajar. And I would say it's more into, if you want to look into it, I would say it's divided. It's one PDU, it's 1 hour.
Yes,
and it's divided through those 3 strategic, leadership, and technical. However, I would say put 0.5 at technical and put 0.5 at leadership.
Okay. It seems that we've covered all questions, Engineer Salah. Thank you again for this great presentation. If you have anything else you want to cover before the end of this session.
First of all, I thank you, everyone. But there's a question from Wajdi. I think this is the last question because it's really important question.
Yes.
He's talking about most business decision makers have the wrong perception that project management is a luxury, which is true. This is how we look into it, that we look at the PMO. Who do they hire? They don't hire expertise, which comes with a greater cost. They are just coordinators. Why? They don't even invest in their training. Even if they hire coordinators, fine, train them well. They don't do that. Why? Because they believe it's a luxury rather than a critical business necessity. Now, what can we do to change their mind? Number 1, we need to provide solid case studies. One of the things that I have showed you in the early beginning slides is the statistics. Those statistics properly show return on investment. So you can do just a simple calculation with the percentages that is provided by PMI and see how much would we save if we invested this money or this much in doing proper project management maturity. This is one way to go. You can show, you can research certain case studies from different organizations. You can share it. And also you can show lessons learned from projects. You can view the organization failed projects, do root cause analysis, which is something I also usually do, and I love doing that. You do root cause analysis, and then you show it to the leaders. And by the way, most of the good leaders I found, they already know the problems they have in their organization. They just needed someone to confirm that, so they can take it as a good, strong decision against that with proper evidence, because whatever assessment or root cause analysis that we do should be evidence-based. So if you look into the failed projects within the organization, you do root cause analysis, this would be a stronger case for you to convince them that is not a luxury, rather it's a necessity.
Yes. Thank you very much, Engineer Salah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you everyone to joining us today. To know more about project management maturity and other topics related to project management, you can visit the PMI website, pmi.org, to find papers, articles, and free documentation. One survey you will send with the PGU by through your emails. So thank you very much, all attendees. Thank you again, Engineer Salah, and see you next time.
Thank you, Hajar, and thank you, Muhammad. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
everyone. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
welcome. Thank you very much. Goodbye.